Hey, I've gotten a lot of feedback off one of my videos about the downside of living in Bloomington, so I am going to do the new downside of living in Bloomington because there are some new things that just aren't so great about living in Bloomington. So stick around. I'm Wendy Kohlmeier, and I make a video every week all about living in Bloomington. So hang with me to the end because the new points are there and some of the old points. So here we go. The first thing is the cost of living. The cost of living is high in Bloomington, and I have another cost of living video that I will attach at the end so you can see what the real estate market is doing. But the cost of living is cheaper in Bloomington than it is in a lot of major cities around Chicago, St. Louis, Cincinnati, Dayton, Indianapolis. It's cheaper than that, but for a town as small as Bloomington is, which the prices are kind of high and the cost of living is kind of high. So that's part of living in a college town. Any college town you go to across America is pretty much going to be the same way, maybe not as high as here, maybe higher, but the cost of living. So you're definitely going to want to check that out. The next thing is we are a student-centric environment. So if you are not affiliated with the university, you might not like living here. Because yes, Bloomington does cater to IU and to the students and faculty and all the workers, because what would Bloomington be if it weren't for Indiana University? So there's that. So with the students, you're gonna have a lot of activity on the weekends and during the football season and the basketball season. You're gonna have a lot of stupidity going on the weekends. For lack of a better word, there's a lot of beer pong and parties and things like that. So you want to be aware of the student rentals around town. They're very close to the university. There's a lot of that, but there's a lot of student rentals in some nice neighborhoods around the university as well. So you do want to be aware of that. And some people don't like that. They do not like students having all the comings and goings all the time right in their backyard, so to speak. So you might not like it here if you are not a fan of the students. And because Bloomington has grown so fast, the traffic is pretty intense and congested. Because you gotta remember, Bloomington was a little small town and 2-lane roads everywhere. So it's been hard for them to expand because there's still a lot of 2-lane roads everywhere, and sometimes that can be very problematic getting in and around town. You definitely want to plan. If you are going to the university or cutting through campus or whatever, you want to know when their class times are, because when their classes let out, you're going to be hung up in traffic. And you have to be very aware because the students step out in front of cars and all kinds of things. So you have to be very aware when driving around campus and through downtown. So if you don't like that, this might not be the place for you. Another thing is the job market. If you don't want to work for the university or in food service, we have a lot of technology here, technology startups, and healthcare. If those are not your cup of tea, you might have a harder time finding a job. So keep that in mind. And let's touch one more time on the weather. We all know that the weather in Bloomington, we are a 4-season community, and we have lovely springs and falls. The springs are pretty rainy. You don't get a lot of sun, and it sometimes seems like the winter goes on forever. The snow hasn't been bad in the last few years. We've had no ice storms like we've had in the past. When it does snow, they get the snow off the streets very quickly. It's no big deal, but the gray season, that is all winter long. So there might be, because of that, you might not want to live here because we do have a very long gray season. And in the summer gets hot. It's already been in the 90s this year, and it gets hot and humid. We also have, the last couple of years, we've had these pop-up storms, and I just want to touch on a storm 2 days ago that was a supercell that moved through Bloomington, and it knocked out 48,000 people without power. They had to bring in all kinds of crews and trucks, and they had the stadium parking lot was full of power company trucks that they brought in from all over the place to try and get Bloomington back online. I just talked to a realtor friend of mine, and it's been 48 hours and he's still without power. So it's been a little problematic. The storm was so intense that it took out so many trees onto power lines and broke poles in half. It wasn't a very long storm. It was probably about 30-45 minutes at the most, but the winds were 70 miles an hour, if you can believe it. And so if you don't like weather like that, you might not want to live in Bloomington. It's Indiana. It's the Midwest. We get storms. So there's that. And then the biggest update I wanted to talk about, and I'll briefly touch on it, is the homelessness. We have a visible homeless population here. So if you don't like that, the homeless tend to congregate in downtown. There's a park downtown that they hang out at, and that's where some of the services are. But they also hang out around the university. Now, the university keeps the homeless pretty much off the campus, but down through Kirkwood and downtown, you will see them kind of all over. They like to hang out at the library and use the facilities there. So a lot of people have complained about it, and so I wanted to touch on it. We do have services here, and I've heard that some of the other small towns bus homeless people in because of our services here. But you know, there's only so many people that our services can accommodate. So if you don't like that, you might not like living in Bloomington. So those are just some things that I wanted to touch on. And if you have any questions and need some help finding a home if you're moving here, please reach out. I will be glad to help you. And don't forget to like and subscribe.